One night, a man named Narendra is driving his truck along a deserted road when he suddenly crashes straight into a passing car. Without hesitation, he kills both the driver and a woman inside. Their bodies are taken to a leather tanning factory by the sea, where they are buried and dissolved with acid to erase any trace. But during the process, some of that acid accidentally spills onto Narendra's hand, leaving a lasting mark. And that night leaves behind a secret no one can escape. This is Rat Akeli Hai. 5 years later in the city of Kanpur, a police inspector named Jatil Yadav is attending his friend Nandu's wedding. His mother is there too, busy trying to set him up by showing his photo to a young woman, clearly eager to see him married. Jatil feels embarrassed and later complains about it at home. He insists that he wants a decent woman with strong values, and he has no interest in being treated like a child who needs to be matched. Not long after, Jatil receives a call from his superior, Lalji, ordering him to investigate the murder of a wealthy businessman, Raghubir Singh, who has just been found dead in his own home. When Jatil arrives at the scene, he is greeted by Ramesh, the victim's brother-in-law. It turns out that Raghubir had just gotten married that very day to a young woman named Radha. His first wife, Karuna, had died years earlier. From that first marriage, he had 2 children, Karuna and Karan. As Jatil heads upstairs, he steps on broken glass from a lantern that had been dropped earlier by a maid named Chuni. Pramila, the wife of Raghubir's brother, scolds Chuni and tells her to clean it up. But Chuni insists she already did, and somehow the shards are still there. Pramila has 2 children, Vikram and Vasudha, and it was Vikram who first discovered Raghubir's body lying in a pool of blood in the master bedroom. Vikram claims he found the body at 12:30 in the morning, even though the wedding ended around 9 p.m. He says that at 9:30 he left to drop off his fiancée and only returned home around 11. Although the distance was short, he explains the delay by blaming traffic. He also mentions that Raghubir had called him at around 11:30 that night. That would mean the victim was still alive just 1 hour before his body was found. During the investigation, Jatil discovers a rifle hidden under the bed, likely the murder weapon. Ramesh points out that the rifle was originally kept inside a glass case in Raghubir's study. He even shows the stone used to break the glass, but Jatil immediately stops him and tells him to put it back, reminding him that nothing at the crime scene should be handled carelessly. Ramesh then shows Jatil a staircase at the back of the house, accessible from an alley, which leads up to the water tank in the second-floor bedrooms, including the master bedroom. While checking upstairs, Jatil notices Radha in her room. He approaches her, briefly struck by her beauty as the investigation begins to unfold. Not long after, Ravi, Karuna's husband, storms in, drunk and furious. He immediately accuses Radha of being the one who killed Raghubir, throwing the entire house into chaos. Jatil quickly steps in and restores order, making it clear that no one is allowed to leave. He is determined to see this investigation through to the end. Once things settle down, Jatil returns to Radha and questions her more closely. He learns that none of her family attended the wedding because she has no family at all. She grew up completely alone. Radha also insists that she never saw the killer, explaining that she was downstairs when the murder happened. Meanwhile, Raghubir's body is taken away in an ambulance for an autopsy. As Jatil prepares to leave, Chuni quietly hands him a note from Radha. Later at home, he reads it and sees just 2 words written on it: Chambal rebels. That message triggers a memory from 5 years earlier. Back then, while traveling on a train, Jatil had heard a man shouting for help after his daughter went missing while he was asleep. Jatil searched the train and found the girl, who turned out to be Radha. She had been on the verge of jumping off the train. After calming her down, Jatil spoke with her and learned that she came from Chambal, a region once known for rebel activity. The next morning at the police station, Jatil reviews footage from the wedding with Nandu. During their discussion, Nandu mentions that according to police records, Karuna died 5 years ago in a robbery while traveling with her driver. This reveals that the woman from the opening incident was actually Karuna, Raghubir's first wife. Not long after that incident, Raghubir brought Radha into his life, though it is unclear how they met. While watching the wedding footage, Jatil also notices a powerful politician named Munna Raja among the guests. It turns out that Munna's daughter is engaged to Vikram. As Jatil digs deeper, he learns that Munna had won multiple elections with Raghubir's support. But that year, Raghubir decided to run for office himself, cutting off that support. This explains why he chose to remarry, hoping to improve his public image. In the same footage, they also spot Raghubir's son, Karan. Nandu recalls that Karan had previously been arrested for drug-related charges, but Raghubir managed to get him released. Another crucial detail comes up: Raghubir left no will. That means his entire fortune now legally belongs to Radha, not to his children or Ravi. With all this in mind, Jatil returns to the house with his team to continue the investigation. He carefully examines the bedroom, taking photos and inspecting every detail. Eventually, he comes across a set of strange photographs hidden inside a magazine, close-ups of a woman's lips, and images of a bruised back. The identity of the woman remains unclear. He also finds a small bead under the bed, stained with Raghabir's blood. Not long after, tension erupts again when Karan confronts Radha, accusing her of the murder. He becomes aggressive, pushing the situation to a dangerous point. Radha reacts emotionally and Jatil is forced to step in once more, even slapping Karan to stop him from escalating things further. Seeing what happened, Ravi is furious. He immediately reports the incident to Munna Raja, claiming that a police officer has assaulted Karan and intimidated the family. Not long after, Jatil goes to Radha's room and asks how she first met Raghabir. What he learns is disturbing. Radha reveals that her own father sold her, and she was eventually bought by Raghabir and kept as his mistress. That is the real reason why, 5 years earlier, she tried to jump off the train. She was desperate to escape being sold. Radha admits that she suspects everyone in the house. Raghabir never cared about his family, and they never cared about him either. Even so, she insists that no matter how much she hated him, she would never have the courage to commit such a brutal murder. Then she shows Jatil the bruises on her back, marks left from Raghabir's abuse. The injuries match the photos Jatil had found earlier. Before leaving, Jatil assures her that he will uncover the truth and warns her not to hide anything, because any lie could have serious consequences. Soon after, Munna Raja arrives at the house. Ravi threatens to report Jatil to his superiors for his aggressive behavior during the investigation. But Jatil stands his ground. He makes it clear that he is not afraid of anyone, even if it costs him his position, as long as the truth comes out. By now, he also realizes that Radha was sold to Raghabir through Munna, who acted as the middleman. As Jatil prepares to leave, he notices an elderly mute woman nearby. It turns out she is Chuni's grandmother, who once worked in the house. From there, Jatil heads to the hospital to review the autopsy report. The doctor confirms that Raghabir died between 10 and 12 at night. He was shot and then struck repeatedly on the head, suggesting the killer acted out of deep anger and personal hatred. Based on this, Jatil begins to suspect that the murderer is someone within the family. He shares his analysis with Nandu, pointing out that by 11 at night, the house had already gone quiet. This means the shooting likely happened between 10 and 11. At that time, there were still celebrations going on, with gunshots and fireworks from the wedding and nearby events, making it easy for a real gunshot to go unnoticed. If that is true, then Vikram's statement becomes questionable. He claimed that Raghabir called him at around 11:30, which would mean the victim was still alive. To verify this, Jatil asked Nandu to check the phone records. The next morning, Lalji brings up Munna's complaint, warning Jatil to be more careful and respectful. Munna is a powerful figure with strong political support, and crossing him could have serious consequences. Shortly after, Nandu confirms that Raghabir's phone did call Vikram at 11:30, but there is something unusual. Vikram also received calls from another number belonging to Raghabir, both before and after that time. Curious, Jatil tries calling that second number himself, and to his surprise, the person who answers is Radha. The next morning, Jatil goes straight to Radha and questions her about her relationship with Vikram. This time, she admits the truth. They were involved, and she once had real feelings for him. Hearing that, Jatil is caught off guard. Radha had been involved with 2 men in the same house. Now Jatil starts to seriously suspect Vikram. It is possible that he and Radha worked together to kill Raghabir, or that Vikram acted alone with his own motive. Because of this, Vikram is taken to the station for further questioning. He explains that Radha was the one who approached him first. It started with her opening up about the abuse she suffered from Raghabir, and over time, their connection turned into a relationship. Jatil theorizes that Vikram had been secretly visiting Radha through the back staircase, the same hidden access that leads directly to the second-floor rooms. That route could have easily given him the opportunity to commit the murder between 10 and 11 at night. But Vikram remains calm and challenges the logic. If he really wanted to kill Raghabir, why would he wait until after the wedding instead of doing it earlier? And if the murder happened before 11, then who made the call to him from Raghabir's phone at 11:30? With that, Vikram urges Jatil to stop making assumptions and focus on solid evidence. What makes things even stranger is that investigators find no fingerprints on the rifle or on Raghabir's phone, which was lying beside the bed. If Raghabir had really made that call, his fingerprints should have been there. Jatil then returns to the wedding footage once again. At around 11, he notices Chuni going upstairs with a lantern during a power outage. Without wasting time, Jatil heads to Chuni's house and questions her about what she was doing upstairs during the blackout. He suspects she may have seen the body and panicked, which caused her to drop the lantern on the stairs. Chuni is clearly frightened. She refuses to say much, afraid for her life. Instead, she questions the police for failing to properly investigate her father's death. It turns out her father was the driver who had been traveling with Karuna 5 years ago. Chuni is convinced that her father was murdered. She had reported it at the time, but a senior officer shut the case down, claiming it was just a robbery. Since then, her grandmother has never spoken again, her mental state shattered after never finding her son's body. This pushes Jatil to dig deeper. He heads to the police archives and pulls up the old case files from 5 years ago. After reviewing them overnight, he shares a disturbing discovery with Nandu the next morning. He finds an identical police report filed in another city, Akbarpur, describing the same robbery involving Karuna and the driver. Even the photo of the overturned car matches. But there is a problem. Akbarpur lies between Gwalior and Kanpur. At the time, Karuna and the driver were traveling from Gwalior to Kanpur, so the accident should have happened in Kanpur, not Akbarpur. This inconsistency leads Jatil to a chilling conclusion. Karuna and Chuni's father were most likely murdered, and the car was deliberately moved to another location to manipulate the crime scene and cover up what really happened. Not long after, Jatil is called to Lalji's house. His superior instructs him to visit Muna Raja the next day and apologize for being too aggressive during the investigation, especially since Vikram is Muna's future son-in-law. But Jatil refuses to back down. He stands firm, making it clear that he is only doing his job to uncover the truth. He explains all the irregularities he has found so far, including the connection to Karuna's death 5 years earlier. The so-called robbery does not add up, especially with the car being found in a completely different city. He also points out that Chuni could be a key witness, since she likely knows more than she has revealed. After hearing all this, Lalji simply tells him to continue his work. Jatil then travels to the Akbarpur police station to examine the evidence from Karuna's case. Among the items collected from the accident site, he finds a broken piece of a truck bumper. When the fragments are matched, they reveal a logo linked to a leather tanning factory in Kanpur. This leads Jatil straight to the factory. After looking into it, he discovers that the factory is owned by Muna Raja and managed by Narendra. At this point, the connection becomes clear. Narendra is working under Muna, and the deaths of Karuna and Chuni's father are most likely tied directly to him. Continuing his investigation, Jatil begins questioning the family members one by one. Starting with Karuna, he asks what kind of man Raghubir really was. She openly admits that her father frequently brought other women into the house. He was arrogant, harsh, and feared by everyone. Even she lived in fear of him. He also learns that Pramila, Vikram, and Vasudha had been living in that house for about 5 years. Meanwhile, Karan and Vasudha had been studying at a boarding school and only returned home during holidays. Karuna also mentions that Pramila often kept a close watch on her movements. Next, Jatil briefly questions Pramila and Vasudha, but nothing immediately suspicious stands out. He then returns to Radha once again. She still denies being the killer, but she adds something important. She believes the murderer must be someone braver than her, someone who suffered even more than she did. The following day, Jatil searches for more clues in Raghubir's study and comes across a medical report from Sarma Clinic. At the same time, Chuni's grandmother returns home and is startled to see an unfamiliar man standing outside smoking. That man is none other than Narendra. The next morning, Jatil is shocked to hear that Chuni has been found dead, strangled by someone. Her grandmother breaks down in grief, having now lost both her child and her grandchild. Jatil immediately suspects Narendra and orders Nandu to arrest him so they can force a confession. But Nandu refuses. In his mind, the case is already clear. He believes Radha is the killer, driven by revenge, and that she may have used Vikram to carry it out. Jatil is furious at this conclusion, especially when Nandu accuses him of being emotionally involved with Radha and letting it affect his judgment. Without holding back, Jatil slaps Nandu, trying to snap him out of it. He insists that the truth is slowly coming together and that Radha is not the one responsible. Their argument draws attention, and soon Lalji intervenes, ordering Jatil to take temporary leave for going too far in his investigation. Even so, Jatil refuses to stop. He is determined to uncover everything. On his way home, Jatil is suddenly ambushed by a group of armed men who start shooting at him. He narrowly escapes and quickly informs Nandu about the attack. But Nandu does not believe him and instead moves forward with Lalji's order to arrest Radha. Realizing the danger, Jatil calls Radha and warns her to leave before the police arrive. Ravi, who has close ties with Lalji, is told to keep her from escaping. But Jatil arrives just in time, takes Ravi down, and rushes Radha out of the house. Together, they jump onto a passing train and manage to get away. However, they are not alone. Narendra has followed them and is already on the train. Soon after, he attacks. In the struggle, Radha fights back with a knife and stabs him in the back. They manage to overpower him and throw him off the moving train. After escaping, Radha brings Jatil to a house by a lake in Gwalior, guarded by a man. This hidden place turns out to be where Raghubir had kept Radha after buying her 5 years earlier. No one in the family knew about this house except for Karan, who had visited it once. Meanwhile, Nandu visits the doctor who performed Chuni's autopsy. The report reveals that skin fragments were found under her fingernails, confirming that she fought back and scratched her attacker. As Nandu prepares to report this, he unexpectedly sees Lalji meeting with Muna Raja, Ravi, and Narendra, who is very much alive. At that moment, Nandu notices something crucial. There are scratch marks on Narendra's right hand, along with damaged skin from an old acid burn that dates back 5 years. Everything suddenly clicks into place. Narendra is the one who killed Chuni. Now Nandu begins to question everything. He realizes that Jatil was right all along, and that this case is far more complicated than it seemed. But one question remains in his mind. What exactly were Lalji, Muna, and Narendra discussing together? And why is a killer standing so comfortably beside them? From there, Nandu goes to Chuni's house and finds her grandmother sitting weak and lifeless. But the moment he shows her an article with photos of Muna and Narendra, her eyes suddenly fill with anger, as if she finally recognizes the truth. At the same time, back at the lakeside house, Jatil discovers a shawl inside Radha's bag. The beads on it match exactly with the one he found under the bed at the crime scene. This immediately raises his suspicion, and he accuses Radha and Vikram of being the ones who killed Raghubir. Faced with this, Radha finally reveals what really happened that night. Vikram had promised to run away with her on the very night of the wedding, but when she saw his fiancée, who is Muna Raja's daughter, jealousy took over, and she realized his promise meant nothing. While Vikram was out dropping off his fiancée, Radha kept calling him, but he ignored her. Only after he returned home did he finally answer. By then, Radha was furious and threatened to expose their relationship to Raghubir. Vikram panicked. With people still around cleaning up after the wedding, he cut the power to avoid being seen, then used the back staircase to sneak up to Radha's room. By that time, it was already 11 at night. They argued, and in the heat of the moment, Radha went straight into Raghubir's room, intending to reveal everything. But what they found shocked them. Raghubir was already dead, lying in a pool of blood. At the same time, Chuni walked in, carrying a lantern for her employer. Radha was told to leave immediately, while Chuni was warned not to tell anyone about what she had seen. Still shaken, Chuni dropped the lantern on the stairs as she rushed back down. After calming himself, Vikram pretended he had just returned home. He then gathered the family and the remaining guests, leading them to pray at the temple. Later, he gave a false statement to Jatil, claiming he only discovered the body after returning from the temple. He did this to avoid suspicion and to keep his relationship with Radha hidden. Not long after, Nandu calls Jatil with a major update. The autopsy confirms that Chuni was murdered, and the scratch marks found on Narendra match the skin fragments under her nails. It is now clear that Narendra killed her on Muna's orders. Hearing this, Jatil loses his composure. It means Muna was willing to have a young girl killed just to protect his future son-in-law, Vikram, and to silence any potential witness. At the same time, it becomes obvious that Lalji has been protecting Muna all along. Jatil also realizes that the attack on his life was not random. It was ordered by Muna because he had started to uncover the connection between Raghubir's murder and the deaths of Karuna and Chuni's father 5 years earlier, both carried out by Narendra under Muna's command. To keep Muna and Lalji satisfied, Jatil reports that Radha has been officially named a suspect and will be detained at the Gwalior police station. But in reality, this is just a strategy. By doing this, Jatil buys himself time and freedom to continue digging deeper, determined to uncover the full truth behind everything. Even though the pieces are starting to connect, Jatil knows there are still 2 major questions left unanswered. First, what was Muna Raja's real motive for killing Karuna and Chuni's father 5 years ago? And second, who actually killed Raghubir and why? Then Jatil suddenly remembers something important. He still has the medical report from Sharma Clinic in his jacket. When he looks at it again, he realizes it is an abortion report under Karuna's name, dated just 1 day before her death. Without wasting time, Jatil goes to Ramesh and asks him about it. Ramesh is confused, completely certain that his sister Karuna was never pregnant again, let alone had an abortion. But then he recalls something from that night. Someone had called Karuna, and she left in a hurry without telling anyone where she was going. A few hours later, Ramesh tried calling her, but she still refused to reveal her location. However, he clearly remembers hearing the sound of a train in the background. That detail helps Jatil connect everything. Karuna must have gone to the lakeside house, since a railway line runs nearby, and the sound of trains can be heard clearly there. Jatil then questions the caretaker of the house. The man reveals that Karuna had asked him to inform her if Raghubir ever came there with another woman. That night, the caretaker did exactly that. He saw Raghubir arrive with a woman who had visited the house many times before, although he never knew her name. From there, Jatil searches the entire house for more clues. He finds a Polaroid camera that was used to photograph Radha's injuries and close-ups of a woman's lips. Then, inside the bathroom, he discovers a boarding school badge belonging to the school where Karan and Vasudha studied. Jatil continues digging deeper. He questions the school principal, revisits the clinic, and goes back over the wedding footage once again. Not long after, Nandu calls with urgent news. Lalji has ordered him to take Radha to a location under a bridge near the factory. Jatil immediately understands what this means. Muna is planning to eliminate Radha to silence her for good, so Jatil quickly works out a plan with Nandu. That night, as the car carrying Radha arrives under the bridge, Narendra and his men are already there, waiting to stage it as a robbery. But things do not go as planned. A shootout breaks out, and Narendra's men are killed. Radha is grazed by a bullet on her arm, and Jatil quickly treats her wound. Meanwhile, Nandu chases after Narendra, who manages to escape into a nearby residential area. Eventually, Nandu loses him and returns to the car. Elsewhere, Narendra ends up near Chuni's house. When her grandmother sees him, something inside her snaps. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, she takes revenge herself, burning Narendra alive. Later, Munaraja arrives at Raghubir's house, laughing as if the entire situation is finally under control. But his confidence disappears the moment Jatil and Radha suddenly walk in. This is where everything begins to unravel. Jatil starts exposing the truth piece by piece. He reveals that Ravi had been regularly buying drugs in Gwalior and even supplying them to Karan. Ravi reacts emotionally, but Jatil quickly puts him in his place and continues laying out the facts. Jatil then exposes the biggest truth of all. Munaraja is the mastermind behind the murders of Karuna and Chuni's father. Their bodies were buried in the leather tanning factory, and by the next day, the police will search the entire place. He begins to lay out the full sequence of events. On that night, Karuna was driven to the lakeside house by Chuni's father after receiving a call from the caretaker, informing her that Raghubir had brought another woman there. When Karuna arrived, she was horrified by what she saw. Raghubir was involved with his own niece, Vasudha. At that time, Vasudha was still very young. What happened there was not a one-time incident. She had been repeatedly abused at that house and subjected to constant violence. The photos of the bruises and the lips that Jatil found earlier were actually of Vasudha. Eventually, Vasudha became pregnant. The school discovered it and reported it to her guardian. Shockingly, the one who showed up was Raghubir himself. According to the medical report from Sharma Clinic, Vasudha underwent an abortion on the 14th of March, but her name was changed to Karuna to hide the truth. The very next day, on the 15th of March, Vasudha was expelled from school after the abortion was discovered, and that same night, Karuna and Chuni's father were murdered. The following day, Chuni reported the deaths to the police, but the case was never properly investigated because Lalji protected Muna's reputation. Jatal then reveals the truth behind Raghubir's murder. The one who killed him was Vasudha, driven by years of trauma and a desire for revenge. The timing also matches perfectly. Between 10 and 11 that night, Vasudha was nowhere to be seen in the wedding footage. After committing the murder, she planted her blood-stained shawl inside Radha's bag to frame her, then switched to another shawl to avoid suspicion. Jatil makes it clear that Muna is responsible for far more than just the earlier murders. He enabled the abuse of Vasudha, covered up every crime, and made sure the victims were never given justice. Even now, despite everything being exposed, Muna still believes he can turn the situation around and threaten Jatil. Then another truth comes out. Pramila had known everything. When Karuna discovered what Raghubir had done to Vasudha, she called Pramila and told her everything. But instead of standing up against it, Pramila chose to protect the secret. She even went as far as asking Muna for help to have Karuna killed on her way back to Kanpur. Her motive was simple and cruel. She believed Vikram, who was closest to Raghubir, would inherit a massive fortune, and she wanted to benefit from it. Hearing this, Vikram and Vasudha are completely shattered. Their own mother had hidden such a horrific truth for the sake of money. The family's corruption is finally laid bare, and Karuna is overwhelmed with emotion as everything collapses. At this point, Jatil makes it clear that Muna will soon be behind bars. Muna falls silent, unable to respond. Vikram, filled with disgust, throws his mother out of the house. And with nothing left, Pramila makes a final, tragic decision. After her body is cremated, Jatil prepares to take Vasudha into custody. And finally, Vasudha reveals the full story of how she killed Raghubir. That night, Vasudha went to Raghubir's room, unable to hold back her frustration any longer. She confronted him about his decision to remarry, knowing it would shift all the inheritance to Radha. But instead of any remorse, Raghubir responded with insults, treating her with complete contempt and pushing her even further. Overwhelmed by everything she had endured, Vasudha lost control. In a surge of anger, she grabbed a stone and smashed the glass case holding the rifle. Without thinking twice, she took the weapon and fired at Raghubir. At that moment, celebrations were still happening outside, with loud noises from weddings and fireworks masking the sound of the gunshot. But it did not end there. Driven by years of pain and rage, Vasudha struck him repeatedly with the rifle, unleashing everything she had been holding inside. Afterwards, she carefully wiped her fingerprints from the weapon. As she moved, her shawl briefly caught on Raghubir's ring, causing one of its beads to fall under the bed without her noticing. She then cleaned the blood from her body and placed the shawl inside Radha's bag, setting up the perfect frame. Soon after, the truth begins to spread. The case of Raghubir's murder makes headlines, revealing that Pramila had conspired with Munaraja to kill Karuna and Chuni's father. Muna is also exposed for his role in Chuni's murder, while the authorities begin investigating Lalji for aiding and protecting him. Meanwhile, Jatil sets out to find Radha, who is already on a train, leaving everything behind to start a new life. He catches up with her, and in the end, chooses to stand by her side. Together, they step into an uncertain world, ready to face whatever comes next. So the moral of the story is, if your family tree looks like a crime documentary, maybe stop worrying about inheritance and just run,